We're going to be looking at 12 running backs that you can pick up off waivers for week 12. These running backs are going to be helping you with your lineups, help you add some depth, and help you march into the playoffs. And I'm not going to lie, we're going to be looking at a lot of backup running backs, a lot of handcuffs who might be primed for a new situation if something happens to the starter, because we already know the landscape of the running back position on waivers right now. It's the same running backs off and on. We got a couple new ones or a couple running backs who are in new situations, but still, we need to look at this backup running back landscape of handcuffs and determine who we need. But what you need to do right now is click that subscribe button, tap it with the finger on your phone, the mouse on your computer. We go deep on the waiver wire here. Every single day of the week, we're talking waiver wire. We help you set your lineups. We help you win those trades. And I'm going to be a big resource next year when it comes to preparing your fantasy draft. So click that button. Stop missing out. Ric Flair's watching. Don't disappoint him. I don't want him upset again because you didn't click that button. But let's roll in. Let's look at these running backs. Zach Charbonnet is walking into more opportunity here. We have to watch Kenneth Walker. He's dealing with an injury, and he came out yesterday's game, and it looks like Zach Charbonnet is probably going to be in as the starter for some time, but still we got to watch the news because we don't know yet. For all we know, Kenneth Walker's back. He's practicing, and he'll be back on the field. We do not know. We got to watch the practice reports. With that being said, everybody's running to the waiver wire now to get Zach Charbonnet. Think about that. We've been saying, hey, watch this Seattle backfield, watch this Seattle backfield, watch this Seattle backfield over and over and over again because these guys take their turns with injuries. We saw it in training camp. We saw it in the offseason. We saw it throughout this season even. It's been little injuries here, a little bit of injuries there. And now Kenneth Walker's dealing with an injury now. The thing with Zach Charbonnet, he seems like a guy who's not going to pop off with 30-plus fantasy points on any given matchup. Really, the game script, the flow of the game, and everything else really has to dictate for him to be super productive. But the schedule going forward isn't great. We got the Niners, Cowboys, Niners, Philly, Tennessee. Not the greatest. So as we get into the fantasy playoffs, he might be a little anchor there on your team and you're trying to figure out what to do with him. But also on the other hand, he's a running back getting touches, and everybody's going to want that. A running back getting double-digit touches a game, who's the starter for X period of time, is something you're going to want, whether it's a bad matchup or not, because they could cross the goal line. They could catch some balls. Kenneth Walker was a staple in this offense for a long time. Zach Charbonnet does have a little bit of upside, scored 12 fantasy points last week, 10 the week prior. And he's been getting more opportunities throughout the week. Honestly, you have to make a decision here whether or not you want him because he's got a rough schedule going forward, and that scares off a lot of people. You have to look at the rest of your league here. Your league mates may need him, and maybe you just block them by picking him up so they don't pick him up. So you don't have to risk going against a Zach Charbonnet who's getting more touches, and maybe that's exactly what that league mate needs because he's stacked a wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, already has a good running back, and just needs a running back who's getting 12 to 20 touches a game over these next few weeks to get into the playoffs. Maybe you can prevent that from happening. You got to analyze this with your team needs and with what you want with your fantasy team going forward. That being said, Keaton Mitchell is another player you got to analyze for your fantasy team for how you want to strategize from week to week. And he's a home run swing. He is kind of like the Will Fuller of running backs right now because you know he's got tremendous upside, but he's not getting enough workload to make him consistent. But that speed says, hey, I could give you 20 to 30 fantasy points on any given Sunday. Are you going to take that risk? Are you going to go after that? Because I can also give you 2. I could also do that. And that's a decision you got to make every week. You may not even want that headache on your roster. You may not. But a lot of people want that because as a flex, as your gamble play, he's probably going to hit half the time, 40% of the time. And those matchups, he's going to win your league. Right now, that's what we're seeing. That's the trends. It could change in the next week or so. He could be the guy in the next couple weeks because something happens to Gus Edwards. Who knows? But the upside is galore. but the touches are low, making him an upside threat. A lot of people are returning him back to the waiver wire. He should be rostered in 12-man leagues because of that upside, because he's getting touches and he's getting him put in spots where he can hit that home run, and if he hits that home run, he wins the week for you. And also, you do not want him on another team in your league that potentially could go against you in the playoffs. Keaton Mitchell is another guy to look at off the waivers again this week. Jeff Wilson, another upside play, even though Mostert's going to be the guy. He was a healthy scratch last week, but Devin Achane came out of the game. Salvon Ahmed came out of the game, and now we're talking about Jeff Wilson again, and that is due to the injuries that have been happening. And you know what? He might be a healthy scratch again, and you know what? Devin Achane could be all right. You know what? Ahmed could be all right come next week. That could be a thing. But if we're looking at waivers, we're looking at running backs who could be stepping into more opportunity, who are in great offenses. Jeff Wilson could be that guy for you. Definitely could be. You may want to take a stab at him. I think in a 12-man league, it's going to be hard to do unless you don't feel good about Achane or Ahmed coming up next week. And you know what? Wilson might be getting some touches so they don't run down Mostert. So that's something you may want to look at. Talking about handcuffs, Ezekiel Elliott handcuffed to Ramondre Stevenson. If I had Ramondre Stevenson and I've been counting on him from week to week, I'd be looking heavy at Ezekiel Elliott because he's getting a 38.8% opportunity share. He's getting double-digit touches a game almost. He's getting opportunities. He's getting work. And if something happens to Ramondre Stevenson, Ezekiel Elliott's value is going to go through the roof. He's going to be seeing a lot more workload, a lot more opportunities, and could be that league winner down the stretch, those final few games, however many games in this imaginary scenario that Stevenson is out. And that could be a thing you want, especially if you have Stevenson and you have that spot on your roster. You're in a 12-team league. Zeke is there, and you know what? That is good enough to patch up, because I guarantee it, if you're in the playoffs right now, Stevenson goes down, you make it to the next game, Zeke is there. I'm going to outbid you for Zeke, and I'm not going to let you have just for strategy's sake. So are you going to let that happen? Are you going to pick him up? That's your decision. That determines what you have on your roster, who else you have at running back, and everything else. But you may want to look hard at him as a handcuff. Rosan Johnson is back in the fold here. D'Onta Foreman ankle injury. We got to pay attention to that. See how long he's going to be out, if at all. He came out of yesterday's game. Khalil Herbert's the man there. It looks like got 16 carries. So you may be looking at Khalil Herbert. If Herbert, for whatever reasons on waivers, obviously you're looking at him over Rosan Johnson, but I'm expecting him to be rostered. I expected him to be rostered last week as well when I was talking about running backs, because he was on IR and he should have been on the IR spot. However, Rosan Johnson, like it was earlier in the season, might be seeing opportunities, might be a guy you put a chip on, but honestly, unlike the start of the season, we're feeling less and less good about him because the opportunities are not mounting up. Ever since he came back from that concussion, the touches were not there. D'Onta Foreman's been holding down the job. Let's see what happens with him. Maybe he can be a guy that hits on the back end of the season. Maybe. But also, do you really want to trust the Bears? A.J. Dillon. It's hard to trust A.J. Dillon. The thing about him is he ramps up when it gets cold. And it's just been a thing he does year after year after year, and I can't explain why. He's a big, thick running back. He's got a little extra meat on him, but that's very subjective and not real. Aaron Jones has a knee injury, came out of yesterday's game. Monitor that. That could equate to more touches for A.J. Dillon. Pay attention to him. He's got good size-adjusted athleticism. He has not been hitting this year. I can see by the graph I posted below, 7.4 PPR points per game. You can't rely on that. But with Jones out, and with the trend of A.J. Dillon going ham in December or late November, you may want to take that stab, see what happens. He's also rostered in a fair amount of leagues due to him just being A.J. Dillon. Tyler Allgeier, the Bijan Robinson handcuff. He's also seen a 34% opportunity share, but we know the Falcons like to run the football. We know we look at Allgeier as a handcuff anyways throughout the season. Now might be the time to strike just in case. If I had Bijan Robinson and I'm looking good for the playoffs, I want Tyler Allgeier. I want him soaking up that roster spot just in case, because I know he's going to get touches if something happens to Bijan. He's going to get way more than what he needs. It's probably going to approach 20. And he may not blow the doors off in fantasy, but it's probably going to be enough touches to score in fantasy, to get you enough to get by, if not a little bit more. Again, like 12 to 15 fantasy points per game or so, and him getting so much workload that it doesn't make sense. And that's something you want to look at. It'll definitely be getting goal line looks and everything else. Something happens to Bijan, you may want to look at him as a huge handcuff or a back end of the roster guy nonetheless. Rico Dowdle, same thing. Tony Pollard's getting a lot of work. He is the cuff to Pollard. There was a lot of scuttlebutt in the media about Rico Dowdle last week and the week prior to that due to him looking good, Pollard not looking so good. Pollard looked all right against the Panthers last week. Looked good. Did not overproduce, though. Did not hit that home run. I think Pollard's going to be the guy for the rest of the season unless something happens to him. Dowdle has been seeing 10-plus touches a game in his last 2 games. He's been seeing more opportunities. Snaps have been around the same, but still in those plus matchups where they can get ahead, they're going to use him a little bit more. But if something happens to Pollard, you're definitely going to want Dowdle. We've been looking at Dowdle all season long, off and on, due to if something happens to Pollard. And you know what? We've had a good trend, a good ride here in the 2023 season where a lot of the stud running backs or the running backs who get volume has been making it out pretty healthy. A lot of other seasons, a lot of these running backs fall up and down with injuries. We've been lucky this season. We got a few weeks left. We got to hope we do. But if not, you got to be prepared. Deis Johnson, Travis Etienne handcuff, a new guy to talk about. But his snaps and touches are increasing. This really depends on how deep you want to go. But also, you want a piece of this Jacksonville offense. He's starting to get more workload, and it looks like he's taking over for Tank Bigsby. It looks like he's getting this opportunity, this run here, starting to see a lot more opportunities in the offense, and you cannot look away from him because if something happens to Travis Etienne, the increased snaps and touches is an indicator that Deis Johnson could be the guy for him, could be getting some workload, and maybe the last couple weeks of the season, if something does happen to Etienne, maybe we see Deis Johnson do some things and get some workload and allow him to get you by in your matchups. Again, Tyjae Spears, Derrick Henry handcuff. We talk about this almost every week this whole season. And I think it's my fault because I talk about him so much. Just the snaps are so high, 53.1%. That's so high for a rookie backup running back or 1B or whatever he is, 1C, 1Z. I don't know what to call it, but the opportunity share is of a backup, but he's really not a backup because he's in on just as many snaps as Derrick Henry. They split it up a good bit, and they're both on the field a good bit. But still, Derrick Henry's the guy. He's an older running back, but he's a big, powerful force. But if he does get hurt, everybody's going to want Tyjae Spears. Right now, he's averaging 7 points per game. You don't want that. And he does have a spot performance here and there. But again, as a handcuff, you may want to look at him. Zamir White. He is like the ultimate handcuff. He's available in like 95% of the leagues right now. Josh Jacobs gets a ton of touches in this offense. He's got an 83.25 opportunity share. They cannot divert away from the running back position so much if they lost Jacobs. Like, the running backs are still going to be used. They're still going to be getting opportunities. Also look at Amir Abdullah. But Zamir White is the guy everybody's going to look at due to the size adjusted athleticism. He's going to get the touches between the tackles, the red zone looks, all those opportunities. Former 4th-round pick. He's called Zeus. Decent size adjusted athleticism here. I want to see him with a full workload. And if something happens to Josh Jacobs, you probably will. Kenneth Gainwell is another running back to look at. And DeAndre Swift has an extensive injury history. And it has not hit this season. And it's not a hit. It's more like something you don't want. But if DeAndre Swift gets injured, then you're going to be looking at Kenneth Gainwell off the waiver wire like that, and you're going to be trying to grab him. If I have Swift, I want Gainwell. If I see Gainwell there, and I like the Eagles' offense, I want Gainwell as a stash just in case something happens to Swift. On his own, he's just getting a 21% opportunity share if you round that up. He's getting you some spot production, which is okay. He's got to cross the goal line, maybe catch a few balls. But still, if something happens to Swift, which has been the knock on him over all these years, then you're going to want Gainwell. He's going to be a popular guy to get off the waiver wire, so why not snatch him up? Those are 12 running backs to pick up off the waiver wire that you can add to your roster right now to help you win your fantasy league. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, though. Ric Flair's watching you. Don't make him sad and upset. Hit that button. But I want to thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.